As those that know me and know me for a long period of time, I inherited the gift of gab from my mom, and I usually don't have any problem speaking to any group over any issues or subjects. But I have to admit to you that I'm about ready to jump out of my skin right now, because speaking about the World Trade Center and the response to the World Trade Center is something that is tough to speak about. It goes without saying, we all remember where we were at and what we were doing. At that time, our nation was under attack on September 11th, 2001. As we watched in horror the events of that morning, I think back to receiving the phone call that I received stating that the Indiana Task Force 1 was being deployed to New York. At the time, I was teaching a confined space class in Lafayette, and it was tough to hold the attention of the students and the firefighters in the class because we were more interested in what was going on TV and watching the live footage. I remember 20 years ago, as we watched in horror the events of that morning, I think back about receiving the call. I remember contacting my wife and advising her that I was headed home from Lafayette and that we were being deployed to New York. I remember the conversations that we had in our home as I was picking up my bags for the deployment. Not certain how long we were going to be gone, or what we would be doing, or how it would affect us in the future. But my wife was very supportive, understood, and said that she had it from here as far as the home stuff goes. I joined our team of Hoosiers with the Indiana Rescue Task Force as we left from New York. We knew where we were going. We was unsure of what we had to do or what we'd be doing. What we were sure of was where we were leaving our families and our loved ones to assist those needed for our help. While traveling by police escort through the night, we prepared ourselves for what laid ahead. When daylight broke, we were just outside of New York City. We could see the smoke arising from the location where the towers once stood. There was complete silence on the bus, and there was 40 firefighters, which is never complete silent when you have that many. But we were quiet. No one had any words to speak. There was no words that could to speak. We were just blocks away from ground zero when we departed the bus. As we walked towards the site, you could smell and taste the thick air saturated from the smoke of the fires and the particles and the dust that was in the air from the buildings that once stood there. I often remember looking at the faces of all those who had been there since the beginning. Tired, dirty faces that all had a blank stare. Firefighters and emergency personnel trying to make some sense of these events and their actions. Trying to understand the magnitude of the event and remembering those that they had lost. We all have memories of that day, or as some would say, we all have our stories. But if I may, I would like to tell you about one of the stories that I have, or one of the memories that I have from there. We were there, and had been deployed, and we were there for about a week, and we had received numerous missions and directives to go do different work and everything. The crew that I was assigned with worked night shifts. That means we worked 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. We were tired. We had to try to sleep during the daytime when we could find time to sleep. We slept on a concrete floor at the Javits Center. And like I said, it was just, we ate what we could, when we could, and what we could find to eat. So by the time of this event that I'm getting ready to describe to you, everybody's tired. But we still knew we had a mission. Everyone was still focused. I received a debriefing about going and doing a secondary search in an exposure building. It was like 48 stories tall building that was an exposure to the World Trade Center. They had numerous fires in it during the event, just hours before, and they wanted a crew to go in and do a secondary search, make sure the building was safe, that it wasn't going to fall, and that all fires were out. My crew and I accepted it. We grabbed what we needed, or what we thought we needed, to complete that mission. Unfortunately, or fortunately for our crew, I drew the short straw. We had the top 10 stories of that building. That means we had to go to the roof. It was a big hike. We were also assigned 2 crews from New York Fire Department that would assist us. Whenever we were deployed on a mission, we always had members of the New York Fire Department or the New York Police Department escort us. So when we found the remains of a firefighter or a police officer, they would take care of their own. So we had about 8 New York firefighters go with us. As we started deploying the stairs, it was quiet. Air was thick. It was very hot. And it was dark. And as we was climbing the flights of stairs, we started talking and kind of starting a conversation. As we got up to around the halfway point, we stopped, get some water, take a break, and relax for a second. And then one of the guys from New York started talking. And I, really didn't know him or didn't know much of him. Just a big burly guy with a big mustache that used a lot of serious adult words in his conversation. But as he started speaking, he became very emotional, and that caught my attention. He started discussing the emotions that he was feeling at that moment. He was talking about how he was one of the first there on one of the first trucks that arrived, and how his crew was assigned to stage outside. And he thought, okay, and that's where they were. And then as the event unfolded, crews were going in, his crew was assigned to go in. And soon after they went in, they were told to evacuate the building, that they was going to go to a defensive posture, and they wanted everybody out of the building. He left the building. As soon as he left the building started to fall. And he remembers running away from the towers. And he felt ashamed because he was running away from danger, knowing that he had friends and colleagues inside. He chose to run, and he felt very ashamed of that. We briefly talked about his emotions. We talked about how things go, but it was at that moment, a week into my deployment with World Trade Center, all the missions and all the actions that we had gone through, all the dirt and the grime, all the little facets and karats that we went and traveled down looking for openings and trying to find live people. That was the moment that it struck me that this event was bigger than me. It was bigger than the moment. And that I had lost focus on what the magnitude of that event was, or was going to be. That this was going to be an event that identifies the United States of America. This is an event that will be known forever. I also realize that there will be hundreds of firefighters and responders that will be struggling with this. Not because of injuries, broken bones, or illness, because of the mental aspect. You see, firefighters We don't run, and we definitely don't run away. This individual, this firefighter that had probably 20 years on at New York Fire Department, now is living with a sense that he ran and he wasn't there to protect his fellow firefighters. I often remember that story and that evening in that stairwell, especially when I'm talking to new recruits and new officers, new fire officers, because this is the guy that had the passion. This is the guy that was always there. This was the guy that did it right, and he still didn't feel like he fulfilled that obligation. So for firefighters, for me, it was a moment of reckoning, down to my core. And as you can tell, I still have a hard time speaking about it. There was many other events, some of them not so solemn and everything, and a lot of comical events that occurred during that time that allowed the members of the Indiana Rescue Task Force to become one. Through our deployment, we stayed focused. We knew what our mission was. We were sent there to rescue, and at the end, we knew that we was there to recover what was needed for families to have closure. It's been 20 years, but I don't forget that morning. Discussion between my wife and I, the response to New York. I'll always remember the taste in my mouth from the air that we were breathing. Sleeping on the concrete floor for hours between briefings, medical check-in, check-out, decon, listening and observing, wondering what was going on at home, knowing my wife was left dealing with everything that goes on with life at Lebanon, Indiana, with having one child in school and two in the military. We, like all Americans that day, tried to understand why did this have to happen. What was going to happen next was always a thought that everyone talked about. Today, 20 years later, we still have questions and the future is still unknown. But we do know that a country came together, our country came together. Thousands of flags went up on houses all over the country. And differences between people just didn't matter anymore. We have acted against those who planned and carried out the event of 9/11, and we are prepared for it in the future. We will never forget the 2,997 people lost in New York, Washington, D.C., or Pennsylvania. Nor will we forget those lost since 2001. You see, 3/4 of the people that responded to the World Trade Center for rescue and recovery operations have developed some sort of illness. And with the Indiana Rescue Task Force, we've lost 4 members due to illnesses from 9/11. We will never forget how those people died. But let's also remember how they lived. Thank you for your support. Thank you for the invitation to speak. May God bless America.